In this video, we'll go over database components, the common ones, which are tables, queries, forms, and reports. And you'll notice they form the basis of the navigation scheme in both LibreOffice, alongside to the left, and in Access, their Create menu, you see the same, tables, queries, forms, and reports. Now, what's the difference? You know what a table is. It stores data. Think of it as rows and columns, as in a spreadsheet, for example. Forms and reports are user interfaces, meaning they're at the system boundary and they allow either data to go into the system, in the case of a form, or pull data out of the system, in the case of a report. So reports are generally thought of very structured, organized, formatted, printed very often, and they usually occur on a similar frequency like weekly or monthly. Report formats don't change very often. Conversely, a query is a question you ask of the database to get information. So queries can be asked again and again and form the basis of a report, or they could be very ad hoc, meaning one time. And if you are interested, here's a link at the bottom to read more about this. Now, some examples. Here's a form, and you'll notice the text boxes, which allow the user to enter information so it can get submitted into the system. And on the right here is a sample report, and you'll notice it's just a way to view data. There's no way to change data there. Now we'll talk about queries and views. Remember, we want to store data in many different tables because we want to keep things organized. We don't want just one great big table. And when you have tables, such as table A and table B, usually they're related to each other, and you're probably going to want to get data from more than one table to answer different questions you might have. So this is where a query comes in. And a query allows you to get data from more than one table, and they're used all the times we're going to spend a fair amount of time on queries. The result of a query is called a view. So think of a view as like a virtual table. The database tends to store the structure of the query, and then once the query's run, it'll store the view, this virtual table, in memory. And then if you turn the database off and you turn it back on, or you rerun the query, it'll rebuild the view for you based on changes in the database. So queries follow a select statement format, which we'll see in a moment. Now, at the bottom is a link which tells you some more information. A little bit about structured query language. This is the language. It's not really a programming language, but it's a standard used for database queries. And the good news for you is much of it is standardized, meaning if you learn SQL for one relational database, such as the LibreOffice Base or Microsoft Access, it ports over to many other systems. This is the same basic idea. So SQL is not really a programming language. It's very simple to learn the basics, but it can get very complex and extremely powerful. And I put a note here at the bottom which just says, usually when people talk about SQL, they're referring to SQL to write queries. This is called the data manipulation language. Just note, SQL can be used for other things, such as a data definition language, which is the part of the standard that does things like create tables. Now, there's more here at this link below. And our final slide, the good news is SQL statements pretty easy to understand. 4 components: select, from, where, order by. Select says which fields in the example below. Select these 2 fields, login ID, full name. From employee, the table, where some condition, vacation hours for employees are equal to 8, and sort by hire date. And most SQL statements follow a very similar format to this. So we know the basics: tables, forms, reports, and queries. Let's look at some database management systems and see how do they actually put these things in action.